It's Chen. When the crowd saw the young man perched atop the tall building, they immediately gasped in surprise. The members of the Luotian assembly, including Yi Qingling, also looked at the figure with delighted expressions. Chen had finally appeared. He has appeared, indeed. Humph. Let's see how you handle the current situation. Otherwise, all the fame you gained from that 3-move agreement will be wiped away today. Su Qingqing snorted coldly. Su Huang's gaze was also fixed on Chen. At this moment, Chen's expression remained unchanged. His eyes held a hint of fatigue, but there was no sign of panic. What's this guy up to? Su Huang muttered to himself, his brow furrowing. On the plaza, the crane demon stared at Chen's figure with an indifferent expression and said, "So you finally decided to show up? As the saying goes, an eye for an eye. When the demon gate visited us not long ago, it's only right that we return the courtesy." Chen looked at the crane demon and smiled. "Oh." The crane demon sneered. "What do you want?" "It's simple. Have those troublemakers who came to the Luotian assembly apologize publicly, and also expel Senior Yang Hong from the demon gate. He harbors ill intentions, and if he stays, it will only bring trouble to the demon gate," Chen said with a faint smile. Chen's words immediately caused an uproar. "You're dreaming." Behind the crane demon, Chun Ho and the others immediately turned pale with rage, and Yang Hong's eyes grew dark. He had only just found the demon gate as his backer. If he were expelled now, his reputation would be shattered. Chen's demand was ruthless. The crane demon's eyes turned cold. He glared at Chen and sneered, "Who do you think you are? You dare to give orders to the demon gate?" Those seniors, including Chen Ho, went to the Luotian assembly just to teach the juniors some discipline. You should be grateful, but instead, you chased them away. I haven't made a fuss about that yet, and now you come to our door uninvited? Hearing this, the members of the Luotian assembly all looked grim, clearly not expecting the crane demon to be so shameless. Chen lowered his gaze and smiled. "Then who do you think you are? You dare to dictate to the Luotian assembly? Teach discipline? Do you even have the right to do that?" The crowd fell silent. Many people secretly grinned. Chen was indeed no pushover. Even in the face of the crane demon, he showed no respect. The crane demon's expression darkened, and the spiritual energy around him grew increasingly violent. He then coldly laughed and sat back in his grand chair. "You've got guts, I'll give you that. But let me make one thing clear. I won't agree to a single one of your demands. And today, it's not the demon gate that owes an apology, it's your Luotian assembly." His gaze turned sinister as he stared at Chen. "If you don't apologize, I'll make sure you walk in today and leave lying down." After saying this, he leaned back in his chair with a cold smile, eager to see what Chen would do. He was curious about what tricks Chen had up his sleeve, daring to speak such foolish words in front of the demon gate's headquarters. The only two people worth noting in the Luotian assembly were Chen and a girl named Luoli. But to think that these two could intimidate the demon gate, with the crane demon present, was nothing short of wishful thinking. As the crane demon's words fell, countless gazes turned to Chen, who was still sitting atop the building. The crane demon had laid down the challenge, rejecting all of Chen's demands. Now, it was time to see what Chen could do. The atmosphere grew tense as all eyes focused on Chen. He merely looked at the crane demon with indifferent eyes before slowly smiling. Yet, there was a hint of danger in his smile. "Since that's the case..." His voice spread softly through the air as his eyes slowly closed. Everyone around him watched in confusion, unsure of what Chen was about to do. The crane demon's expression remained cold, and the members of the demon gate grew more cautious. Chen's behavior was strange, and they wondered if he had prepared some powerful trick. The air seemed to freeze at that moment. The crowd exchanged bewildered glances. What on earth was going on here? What is he doing? Xun'er asked, also confused, quietly turning to Su Xian. Su Xian furrowed her brows slightly as she stared at Chen. She vaguely felt some unusual fluctuations, and those waves didn't seem to be confined to just Chen's surroundings. Her gaze spread out, and she realized that these waves seemed to be surrounding the headquarters of the demon gate. Boom! Just as the atmosphere froze, a faint trembling sound suddenly came from the distance. Everyone's eyes quickly turned toward the source, only to see a towering tower not far from Mu Chen crack open with deep fissures. Large rocks collapsed from the tower, and then, light began to spread from the top of the tower. The light resembled beams of spiritual energy, slowly spreading in the air above the tower. Boom! At the same time, another tower in the opposite direction also began to collapse. Boom! Boom! The sounds of collapse continued to echo. The crowd's eyes darted back and forth, uncertain, and within just a few minutes, 10 towering towers around the plaza had collapsed. 10 brilliant beams of light shot up like blazing suns, perfectly surrounding the Demon Gate headquarters. What is that? Everyone stared at the massive light orbs rising into the air, their eyes filled with confusion. Hiss, hiss, as they marveled. The 10 enormous light orbs slowly expanded, and violent fluctuations of spiritual energy began to take shape in the air. That's Su Xian, Su Huang, and the other top-tier students stared at the spreading light orbs, and their pupils shrank. Spirit arrays? Those are spirit arrays, Su Xian said, taking a sharp breath, slowly speaking. Spirit arrays? Su Ling'er and the others gasped. All of them are spirit arrays? How is that possible? How could Mu Chen set up so many at once? How many spirit seals would he need to control them? Looking at the scale of these spirit arrays, they were likely all level 3 spirit arrays, but to set up 10 level 3 spirit arrays at once would require at least a level 5 spirit array master. But Mu Chen, clearly, could not have reached that level, because a level 5 spirit array master would be comparable to a heavenly transformation expert. If he were that powerful, wouldn't he already be the top figure at the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy? Wait. Su Xian frowned again. These spirit arrays don't seem to be fully activated yet. They're just etched outlines. She looked at Mu Chen, who had his eyes tightly closed. It seemed these spirit arrays had been directly etched onto the towers. So, Mu Chen had secretly disappeared in recent days to hide here and carve the array diagrams. With this, all he needed was to condense the spirit seals to activate these arrays, and then he would be able to fully activate them. If all 10 level 3 spirit arrays were activated at once, the power would be terrifying. But, could Mu Chen really control 10 level 3 spirit arrays at once? This guy really has some tricks up his sleeve, Su Huang remarked from another building, staring at the 10 light orbs surrounding the Demon Gate headquarters. His expression grew more serious. His disappearance these past few days wasn't because he was hiding, but because he was secretly carving these array diagrams near the Demon Gate headquarters. From the start, this was his plan. So what if he's carved out the outlines of these spirit arrays? What strength does he have? To condense the spirit seals needed to activate 10 level 3 spirit arrays, that's just a pipe dream, Su Qingqing said, still trying to act tough despite being shocked by the scene before her. Su Huang nodded, his eyes locked on Mu Chen, who still had his eyes closed. Could it be that the latter really could achieve this? The sudden changes clearly caused some commotion in the area. The people from the Demon Gate had uneasy expressions, with hints of worry crossing their faces. The 10 massive light orbs floating around them were exerting immense pressure. Level 3 spirit arrays could usually only threaten those at the Fusion Sky Realm. But if all 10 were triggered simultaneously, even early-stage heavenly transformation experts would have to run as fast as they could. In front of them, the crane demon's eyes were fixed on the floating light orbs, his gaze dark and cold. I refuse to believe that with just your mid-stage heaven-merging stage strength, you can truly control so many third-tier spirit arrays. His gaze was icy as he sneered. Buzz. Under countless watching eyes, a powerful surge of spiritual energy rippled around Mu Chen. Yet, his eyes remained tightly shut. He blocked out all external distractions, immersing himself in the meticulous control of his heart formation state. His comprehension of the heart formation state had deepened significantly. Even with his eyes closed, the world outside seemed imprinted in his mind. The intangible wind, the flowing spiritual energy of heaven and earth, everything was reflected within him. However, relying solely on the heart formation state was not enough to refine so many spirit seals to activate the arrays. His spiritual energy was simply insufficient to support such a feat. But Mu Chen's lips curled slightly. A flash of light shimmered from within his sleeve as a smooth, glowing pearl appeared in his palm, radiating a soft white glow. Within the pearl, a white dragon seemed to coil and twist. This was the White Dragon Spirit Pearl, which Mu Chen had obtained from the White Dragon Supreme. Contained within this pearl was an immense reserve of spiritual energy. With its power, he could refine all the necessary spirit seals. As the White Dragon Spirit Pearl emerged in Mu Chen's palm, his fingers clenched tightly around it. A faint white light spread outward, and a deep, resonant dragon's roar echoed. Boom! The White Dragon's Spirit Pearl trembled violently in his grasp. A torrential surge of spiritual energy, vast as an ocean, gushed from the pearl into Mu Chen's body. The energy was pure and boundless, carrying an undertone of dragon roars. It surged through him with such force that even his body felt faintly strained, overwhelmed by its immense power. Mu Chen took a deep breath, not daring to hesitate. He immersed his mind into the heart formation state once more. With his heightened control, his hands began rapidly forming intricate seals. As his hands wove through the air, everyone could see dazzling rings of light rippling outward from his body. Within those waves of brilliance, spirit seals began materializing at an astonishing rate, forming one after another in the palm of his hand. He started refining spirit seals. A startled cry rang out as countless gazes fixated on Mu Chen. Su Xian and Su Ling'er watched anxiously. Refining spirit seals was not difficult, but producing enough to simultaneously control 10 third-tier spirit arrays, that was the true challenge. Under the intense scrutiny of the crowd, Mu Chen's radiance grew even stronger, and the number of spirit seals he refined soared at an incredible pace. Within mere minutes, over 100 spirit seals had formed, hovering around him. The sheer number of spirit seals made many people's eyelids twitch. Refining over 100 spirit seals at once, only a fourth-tier spiritual array master could normally achieve such a feat. The members of the Demon Gate, gathered in the square, began shifting uneasily. A trace of apprehension flickered in their eyes as they finally sensed danger. Crane Demon's expression remained dark, but his fingers clenched the armrest of his seat. A thin crack splintered across its surface. His instinct screamed at him to act now and stop Mu Chen, but the current situation forced him to remain still. He had already relinquished the initiative to Mu Chen. If he intervened now, others would think he was afraid. And that was something Crane Demon could not tolerate. I want to see just how far you can go. His gaze locked onto Mu Chen's figure, his face expressionless, making those around him hesitate to speak. Not far away, Yang Hong's expression flickered between shadow and light. His eyes, fixed on Mu Chen, gleamed with fear, jealousy, and resentment. He could sense Crane Demon's unease. Even the latter was beginning to feel threatened. Yang Hong clenched his fists, his teeth grinding. He simply could not accept that Mu Chen had grown this powerful. Buzz. Under the weight of countless tense stares, Mu Chen's figure seemed to blur within the dazzling radiance. The number of spirit seals surrounding him surged even higher. But due to the overwhelming glow, no one could clearly see just how many seals he had refined. The intense, overwhelming light gradually diminished after a long while. As the light faded, Mu Chen's figure once again appeared in front of everyone's eyes. All gazes immediately turned toward him, followed by a series of sharp breaths in shock. Surrounding Mu Chen's body, countless spirit seals floated densely in the air, almost 500 in number. The sheer amount of them was so staggering that it left everyone stunned, their vision blurring. How is this possible? Some people gasped in disbelief, unable to comprehend how someone at the mid-stage of the heaven transformation realm could possibly refine so many spirit seals. And even if he could indeed refine that many, could he really control them all? The arrangement of spirit arrays was extremely meticulous. Any slight disruption could cause the array to collapse. On a rooftop, Su Qingqing stared blankly at the scene, unable to speak another mocking word. Even she, despite her usual arrogance, could now understand the terrifying significance of the 500 spirit seals. 500 spirit seals. Su Huang, standing before her, exhaled deeply. His usually calm face now showed a trace of disbelief, muttering, "How could he control them?" "Mu Chen is incredible," Su Linger exclaimed, her eyes wide in awe. Beside her, Li Qing, Guoxiong, and the others exchanged glances, all able to see the shock in each other's eyes. They had already witnessed Mu Chen's extraordinary abilities during their previous missions. This seemingly calm and composed young man always had countless hidden tricks up his sleeve, giving off the aura of someone unfathomable despite his young age. They had thought Mu Chen would engage in a direct battle with the Crane Demon, but no one expected that he had secretly filled the area outside the Demon Gate headquarters with spirit arrays. What was even more terrifying was that he was actually able to activate them all at once. "You all forgot," Su Xian suddenly said with a light praise. "He's a spirit array master. In fact, he may have already reached the level of a 4th-rank spirit array master." "If I'm not mistaken," Su Xian continued, "Mu Chen must have also comprehended the heart formation state, and I fear it's not just at the beginner level." Indeed, Mu Chen was a spirit array master, but the reason he could control such an overwhelming number of spirit seals so perfectly was clear. He had mastered the heart formation state, and his level of understanding was quite advanced. With his 4th-rank spirit array master capabilities, combined with the high-level heart formation state, some advanced preparations, and external assistance, controlling 10 3rd-rank spirit arrays simultaneously was not an impossible feat. Whoosh whoosh. As everyone marveled at the terrifying number of spirit seals, Mu Chen's slender fingers flicked lightly. Immediately, the sound of wind tearing through the air rang out, and the numerous spirit seals whistled into the air, scattering and then piercing into the 10 massive orbs of light that surrounded the Demon Gate headquarters. As the spirit seals entered, everyone could see the 10 orbs suddenly expand at an astonishing speed. Streams of intricate spiritual energy intertwined, gradually forming 10 massive, different spirit arrays. "Great Flame Demon Formation activate." Mu Chen's indifferent voice rang out in the silent region, and the crowd immediately saw a huge spirit array burst forth in a crimson glow. Violent and scorching waves of energy surged. Wind Demon Spirit Formation. Another 3rd-rank spirit array was successfully activated, the hurricane howling like blades. Mountain Peak Demon Ceiling Formation. Golden Tiger Roars the Sky Formation. Names of spirit arrays echoed from Mu Chen's mouth, and with each command, a 3rd-rank spirit array was successfully activated. In just a few breaths, the 10 spirit arrays in the sky had been fully activated. As their light spread, the spiritual energy in the surrounding heaven and earth seemed to become wildly chaotic. Everyone gazed in awe at the spectacular scene of 10 spirit arrays activating simultaneously. A deep sigh filled the air as all were shaken. No one had expected that Mu Chen would truly succeed in arranging and even activating these 10 3rd-rank spirit arrays. This guy, Mu Gu, is terrifying. The members of the Luotian Assembly stared blankly at the scene in the sky, their expressions frozen in shock. Even Yi Qingling and Zhou Ling were utterly dazed. Clearly, none of them had expected Mu Chen to pull off something like this. So, this is what he was up to during his disappearance. They exchanged glances, realization dawning on them. It seemed that when this guy got angry, he truly became a force to be reckoned with. Luo Li lifted her delicate face, her gaze quietly fixed on the slender figure seated atop the towering structure. A soft, almost imperceptible smile curved her lips. The entire plaza had fallen into absolute silence. The once laughing and carefree members of the Demon Gate had long since abandoned their mirth. Their faces were pale as they stared at the 10 massive spirit arrays that now surrounded their headquarters. The sheer force of the overwhelming spiritual energy made their legs feel weak. At this moment, they could no longer muster any jeers. No one had expected that this so-called freshman, Mu Chen, would go so far as to encircle their headquarters with spirit arrays. "What do we do now, boss?" Chen Ho's lips trembled, his voice hoarse. Even he felt a chill run down his spine under the pressure of 10 Tier 3 spirit arrays. If those formations were unleashed against him, he doubted he'd have any chance of survival. The core members of Demon Gate beside him also had stiff expressions. If not for Crane Demon's presence, their courage would have already crumbled. Crane Demon's face was dark and unreadable. His grip suddenly tightened, and with a sharp crack, the armrest of his chair shattered into dust. As silence hung in the air, Mu Chun, still seated atop the tower, slowly opened his tightly shut eyes. A faint flush crossed his face, but his dark pupils remained icy cold as they swept across the gathered members of the Demon Gate. Senior Crane Demon. His indifferent voice rang out in the stillness. Everyone's attention was instantly locked onto him. His calm tone carried an inexplicable pressure, making it impossible for anyone to dismiss him lightly. I wonder. His voice echoed across the plaza, laced with a quiet detachment. Do I now have the qualifications to pay a visit and seek guidance? The moment his words spread through the area, the air itself seemed to freeze. The seemingly frail figure of the young man radiated a presence that no one could ignore. It wasn't just his demeanor. It was the overwhelming force of the 10 Tier 3 spirit arrays that backed him. Now, no one would dare laugh at his so-called visit. The members of the Demon Gate were utterly silent. The grins had long since vanished from their faces, replaced by grave expressions. They exchanged uncertain glances, their eyes filled with apprehension. Boss. Chun-Ho and the others turned their gazes toward Crane Demon, whose face remained expressionless. Under the weight of countless stares, Crane Demon slowly withdrew his palm from the ruined armrest. Fine wooden dust scattered to the ground as he casually brushed off the debris from his hand. He then lifted his head, his gaze chillingly sharp. Mu Chun, I must admit, you truly are full of surprises. Mu Chun merely smiled, unconcerned. His eyes remained locked onto Crane Demon as he spoke, his voice calm yet unwavering. When one makes a mistake, there's always a price to pay. Don't you agree? You think? Crane Demon's voice turned frigid, an invisible chill seeping into the air. That merely relying on 10 Tier 3 spirit arrays is enough to render me powerless? If all 10 arrays erupted at once, even an early-stage heaven transformation expert would be annihilated in an instant. But if that was all Mu Chun had, then the position of 4th on the heavenly ranking would have never belonged to Crane Demon in the first place. The surrounding spectators watched the escalating confrontation, inwardly astonished. This battle was already shaping up to be far more intense than Mu Chun's previous 3-move duel with Li Xianong. These spirit arrays must have cost you quite some time. Crane Demon slowly rose to his feet. His tone remained eerily calm, devoid of emotion. I underestimated you. I never expected you to be hiding outside our Demon Gate, preparing all of this. He cast a cold glance at Mu Chun. But after you've exhausted these formations, his gaze turned razor-sharp, his voice laced with quiet menace. What else do you have left? Tier 3 spirit arrays were formidable, enough to force even a mid-stage heaven transformation expert to retreat. But just because others couldn't withstand them, the Crane Demon's body stood straight. A shocking fluctuation of spiritual power surged from within, sweeping out like a tidal wave. The stone slabs beneath its feet quietly shattered, cracks rapidly spreading outward toward the distance. Upon seeing this spectacle, everyone was immediately startled. Was the Crane Demon planning to act directly and confront the 10 third-tier spirit formations? Chun-Ho, after I deal with these 10 third-tier spirit formations, immediately take action. Since others have come to our Demon Gate headquarters to cause trouble, there's no need to hold back, the Crane Demon said indifferently, stepping forward. Yes. Chun-Ho and the others quickly responded. Their eyes gleamed with killing intent as they fixed their gaze on the members of the Luotian assembly. Without the threat of those third-tier spirit formations, they had no fear of the new members of the Luotian assembly. Although Luoli was powerful, she couldn't match them in numbers. Once they launched a brutal attack, they were confident these new members wouldn't dare remain. Yi Qingling and the others noticed the bloodthirsty gleam in Chen-Ho's eyes, their expressions subtly changing. However, none of them showed signs of retreating. Luo Li's eyes gleamed coldly. She then extended her slender jade hand, gently gripping the hilt of her black longsword. A sharp sword and tint slowly gathered around her. The atmosphere instantly became tense, every gaze locked on the advancing crane demon. As the tension thickened, Mu Chen remained calm, watching the crane demon advance with an expression as still as ever. He then smiled and said, "Senior crane demon, these 10 third-tier spirit formations are not prepared for you." The crane demon paused. Looking at Mu Chen, he sneered, "Oh? Do you still have the ability to do something else now?" The crane demon was no ordinary person. While he didn't know exactly what method Mu Chen had used to set up the 10 spirit formations, he could tell this was likely Mu Chen's limit. There was no way the latter could divide his focus and do anything else now. This insight wasn't unique to him. Even Su Xian, Su Huang, and others shared the same realization. They nodded slightly. Given what Mu Chen had already accomplished, it was impressive. But trying to do anything else at this point was clearly impossible. Mu Chen, however, paid no attention to the many skeptical gazes. He simply smiled and said, "Senior crane demon, these formations are for those rude people who came to cause trouble at our Luotian assembly. So, I think you should let them try to break through these formations." As he spoke, his gaze, as sharp as a blade, turned to Chen Ho, Yang Hong, and the others in the back. Upon meeting his gaze, they trembled slightly. "Once I break your spirit formations, they will naturally come to experience your methods." The crane demon sneered, completely ignoring Mu Chen. With a stomp, his figure shot forward, a surge of mighty spiritual power erupting as he charged toward Mu Chen. "Well then, I'll have to use something else to entertain Senior Crane Demon," Mu Chen said with an indifferent smile. He then clenched his hand, and with a flash of light, a rusted metal iron ball appeared in his grasp. As soon as it appeared, Mu Chen immediately poured his spiritual power into it. Buzz! The metal ball exploded with 1,000 rays of golden light, and the light spread, sending out a wave of astonishing spiritual fluctuations. As the spiritual power rippled, everyone saw a massive spirit formation rapidly expanding in the sky. The formation was enormous, far surpassing the nearby third-tier spirit formations. The complex spiritual energy lines intertwined to form a particularly obscure and profound formation map. Whoosh, whoosh. It felt as if a hurricane had been stirred by the spiritual energy fluctuations. The vast, 100-foot-wide, intricate glowing formation hovered above Mu Chen's head, a terrifying sight. Everyone looked in shock at the formation that had unfolded above Mu Chen's head in the blink of an eye. It was clear to all that this formation was far beyond the scope of a third-tier formation. Given its fluctuations, it was likely that even in the realm of fourth-tier spirit formations, this formation was extraordinary. How is this possible? They were at a loss for words. They couldn't believe that Mu Chen had set up a fourth-tier spirit formation in such a short time. And judging from Mu Chen's earlier actions, this fourth-tier spirit formation clearly hadn't been pre-engraved, but was something he had casually set up and activated on the spot. "It's the Ling Zhenzi." Su Xian's eyes flashed in surprise as she whispered, "It's the Ling Zhenzi from the White Dragon City auction." Su Xun'er and the others beside her were equally stunned. They naturally knew about that spirit array, and it was Su Xun'er who had bought it at an auction to give to Mu Chen. Back then, seeing its rusty appearance, they thought it had lost its power, but to their surprise, it had now unleashed immense strength in Mu Chen's hands. No wonder he's not afraid of the crane demon. He still has such tricks up his sleeve. Su Xun'er exclaimed joyfully. The spirit array contained within it was no weak force. Facing an array of that level, even the crane demon would have to be extremely cautious. Now, how could the crane demon continue to be arrogant in front of Mu Chen? Mu Chen doesn't do anything without confidence. Since he dares to confront the demon gate, how could he not have something prepared for the crane demon? Su Xian said with a light smile, her gaze strangely lingering on the figure of the young man. Countless gazes around them froze due to the sudden appearance of the spirit array. Even the crane demon, who was about to charge at Mu Chen, abruptly stopped, his face flickering with uncertainty. From the huge spirit array, he sensed a strong sense of danger, making him realize that he wasn't confident he could handle what was coming. What a good method! The crane demon coldly stared at Mu Chen, a dark glint flashing in his eyes as he gritted his teeth. "Senior Crane Demon, you flatter me." Chen smiled faintly and said, "Next, I'd appreciate it if you could stay quiet. Otherwise, I don't mind fully activating this spirit array. But once I do, I won't be able to stop. I'm not sure what consequences will follow, and I might not be able to take responsibility for them." "Are you threatening me?" The Crane Demon's hands clenched tightly, his tone cold. "If Senior Crane Demon wants to think of it that way, I have no objections." Chen gripped the rusty spirit array and smiled. The Crane Demon glared at Chen, veins bulging on his hands. However, he didn't strike. If Chen only had 10 level 3 spirit arrays, he wouldn't be particularly concerned. But with the addition of a powerful 4th level spirit array, things were different. Even he wasn't confident he could handle it. 10 level 3 spirit arrays, do you really think that can hold back all the experts of the Demon Gate? The Crane Demon gritted his teeth. As long as he stood here, Chen wouldn't dare activate that 4th level spirit array. Besides, apart from him, there were 3 others from the early stages of the Heaven Transformation stage in the Demon Gate. With the combined power of their forces, they could not be underestimated. "It seems Senior Crane Demon still hasn't agreed to my previous requests." Chen stared at the Crane Demon and said, "You want us, the Demon Gate, to apologize to you new recruits? You don't have the ability to make that happen." The Crane Demon sneered. If they were to apologize, the Demon Gate would lose all face. In that case, Chen smiled faintly, but his smile suddenly turned cold. He swiftly changed his hand seals, and the 10 massive level 3 spirit arrays erupted in brilliant light, their violent spiritual energy sweeping through the area. Everyone's hearts trembled. Chen had actually activated all 10 level 3 spirit arrays. Then, I asked the Demon Gate's people to receive the arrays. Boom. With Chen's last words, the violent spiritual energy erupted, spreading like a tidal wave across the sky above the area. The 10 massive level 3 spirit arrays were fully activated, and from afar, they appeared like 10 blazing suns, surrounding the headquarters of the Demon Gate. Chen Ho and the others stared at this scene with pale faces. If it were only one level 3 spirit array, they would not be afraid, but now there were 10. The combined force was far from simple. However, at this point, they had no retreat. Judging by the Crane Demon's grim expression, he clearly wasn't going to back down. So they had no choice but to unite and block the 10 level 3 spirit arrays. If they could stop it, Chen would lose his powerful trump card, and then they could turn the tide. Everyone, gather together and attack together. I don't believe we can't deal with 10 level 3 spirit arrays. Chen Ho gritted his teeth and shouted. The other Demon Gate members hurriedly gathered around. At this point, if they scattered, they'd probably be in big trouble. Yang Hong also gritted his teeth, glaring with resentment and caution at the slender figure sitting atop the tower in the distance. On the tower, Chen coldly gazed at the square below, where spiritual energy shot into the sky. With a swift change in his hand gestures, the 10 third-tier spirit formations in the sky trembled violently, as raging spiritual energy frantically gathered toward them. Boom! Boom! As the spiritual energy gathered, the next moment, the 10 beams of light erupted like beams tearing through the heavens. The explosive sound shook the air as the beams, without any mercy, blasted down at the many members of the Demon Gate on the square. Attack together! Chen Ho and the others, their faces pale with shock, watched as the enormous beams of light sped toward them. With a loud command, they unleashed all their spiritual power, creating a protective barrier of spiritual energy above them. Buzz buzz! The other Demon Gate members hurriedly activated their spiritual energy, and soon, multicolored spiritual power spread outward, forming magnificent arrays of light that appeared one after another, creating a stunning spectacle. Around the square, countless eyes nervously focused on the dazzling scene, wondering who would come out on top in this fierce clash. Boom! Under the watchful eyes of all, the 10 beams of light finally descended with immense force. On the tower, Chen's expression was cold, and he clenched his palm fiercely. In an instant, the 10 beams of light, amid astonished gazes, suddenly twisted together, rapidly spinning to form a spiral light beam. Creak. The massive spiral light beam passed through the air with a screeching sound, as though even the air itself couldn't bear the pressure. Such exquisite control. Someone gasped in admiration. Who could have thought that Mu Chen could not only control the 10 third-tier spirit formations, but also force their attacks to merge into one? With this, the attack became even more ferocious. Wasn't this even more terrifying? Whoosh! As these thoughts crossed their minds, the spiral light beam, resembling 10 furious dragons, shot down and violently collided with the spiritual energy barriers. Bang! Bang! At the moment of impact, everyone could clearly see the barriers of light shattering in an instant. The 10 twisted beams of light, with unstoppable momentum, swept through the barriers. The ground of the square cracked open under the force of the spiritual energy. Figures were sent flying, blood spattering as they crashed backward. Chen and the others, seeing the ferocity of the 10 beams, were greatly shocked. Boom! The 10 sweeping beams of spiritual energy crashed into the barrier they had formed, shaking it violently. Ripples spread quickly. "We can't hold it!" Someone beside Chen, whose strength had also reached the early stage of the heaven transformation stage, shouted, his face turning red from the strain. "Withdraw." Chen-Ho's eyes flickered with panic. The 10 beams had nearly been twisted into a single force. The impact was terrifying. Even though they had joined forces, they could not concentrate their power enough to stop this terrifying force. The remaining Demon Gate members, hearing Chen-Ho's command, gritted their teeth and immediately retreated together. Bang! As they retreated, the spiritual energy barrier shattered instantly. The massive beams of light, like enraged dragons, roared through, cutting between them. Anyone caught in the blast was sent flying, blood spraying wildly. Whoosh! The beams howled as they tore through the ground, charging across the square, and crashed heavily into the Demon Gate headquarters. The earth itself seemed to tremble as the Demon Gate headquarters was directly shattered. The towering structures instantly reduced to rubble. After wreaking havoc, the beams of light finally lost their momentum, slowly dissipating, until they vanished completely. Smoke and dust filled the air, and the square lay in ruin. Everyone's gaze was filled with shock as they looked at the scene before them. A huge trench, about 10 or more yards deep, crossed the square, cutting through it all the way to the Demon Gate headquarters, which had been destroyed in the process. The square was filled with the cries of the Demon Gate members. Only a few powerful figures, like Chen, managed to remain standing, though their faces were still filled with lingering fear. Clearly, the terrifying force of the 10 spirit formations had left them shaken. Everyone looked at the Demon Gate members, who were completely defeated, with a sense of shock. The power of the spirit formation was indeed formidable. If it had been a normal battle, it would have been far from easy to crush so many opponents at once. In the sky above, after releasing its terrifying attacks, the 10 spirit formations gradually faded and eventually completely dissipated. With the disappearance of the spirit formations, the oppressive atmosphere in the area also vanished. The remaining Demon Gate members, including Chen, who still had some combat strength, glared fiercely at Mu Chen. Mu Chen ignored them and turned his gaze towards the crane demon. At that moment, the latter's face darkened after the Demon Gate headquarters was destroyed. "You dare destroy my Demon Gate headquarters?" The crane demon trembled with rage, glaring at Mu Chen with an icy, murderous look in his eyes. "Is this how you feel when you're treated this way?" Mu Chen replied coldly. His gaze was as sharp as a blade, equally chilling. "Did you ever think of this when you were bullying members of the Luotian Assembly? The mighty Demon Gate, using dozens of people to gang up on a single girl. Since you've thrown away all dignity, why should I leave you with any useless thing like that?" The crane demon's eyes grew even colder. Naturally, Chen-Ho's actions were under his orders, driven purely by the grudge over Mu Chen not giving him face back then. But who would have expected Mu Chen to be so ruthless and merciless? "Boss, we're going to catch this brat. Let's see how smug he can be." Chen-Ho shouted fiercely. Then, he and two other early-stage heaven transformation warriors leaped forward, charging straight at Mu Chen. "Get back!" But as soon as they moved, Luo Li's graceful figure appeared before them. With a black long sword in her hand, her jade-like fingers gripped it tightly. Her eyes, like crystal-clear glass, were cold as ice. She unleashed a sweeping sword chi, tearing the ground apart and slashing fiercely at Chen Ho and the other two. Chen Ho and the others changed their expressions. Having experienced Luo Li's strength before, they dared not underestimate her. The three of them struck at once, their spiritual power clashing with her sword chi. Boom! The ground shattered, and the three were violently knocked back. You dare! The crane demon's eyes turned cold, and his spiritual power surged as he was about to strike at Luo Li. You dare! Chen coldly shouted in return. His hand gripped the spirit array token tightly, and the massive spirit formation overhead began to slowly rotate. Feeling the violent spiritual fluctuations from the giant formation, the crane demon's eyes grew darker. He fixed his gaze on Chen and said, "Do you really think this spirit formation alone can deal with me? Then come and try." Chen's eyes were as cold as ever, staring at the crane demon. "Fine. Today I'll see just how incredible you are." The crane demon sneered in rage, stepping forward as his spiritual power surged like a tidal wave. But just as the crane demon was about to strike, a graceful figure flashed past, appearing in front of Chen. With a gentle smile, she said, "Crane demon, this incident started because of you all. Why push things further?" Xian. Seeing the gentle girl in front of Chen, the crane demon's eyes instantly darkened. "Are you going to help him?" "I just don't want to see both sides fighting and causing unnecessary conflict," Xian smiled lightly. The crane demon twitched his eye. With things already escalating this far, what was the point of talking about peace? Xian's words sounded nice, but it was clear she was trying to help Chen. "What if I refuse?" The crane demon's voice was as dark as ever. "Chen saved the lives of my sisters, so I can't just stand by and watch him being bullied." "I'm sorry." Xian's voice was soft, but her meaning was clear. If the crane demon attacked Chen, she would step in. The crane demon's eyes were filled with fury. He clenched his hands slowly, his rage burning in his heart. It was the first time he saw Xian protect a man, and it almost made his jealousy explode. The crane demon's fists creaked as he clenched them tightly, but in the end, he didn't act. Now was not the time for him to make a move. Taking a deep breath, he slowly suppressed his anger, but his eyes, full of venom, remained fixed on Chen. "Chen, don't think you've won this time. I simply haven't considered you a worthy opponent yet. But don't worry, in the hunting war, I'll make you my prey. When that time comes, you'll pay for everything you've done today. And by then..." His eyes turned to Xian, cold as a snake's. Chen heard the words and gave a faint smile. With a grip of his hand, the spirit array dimmed and turned back into a rusty, battered metal ball, which he then put away. "Crane Demon Sr., no matter what you're planning to do." He stood up from the tower, glanced at the crane demon, then waved his hand at Luo Li and the others below before turning to leave. Only his voice, calm and steady, echoed through the disheveled plaza. "I, Chen, will accompany you to the end." On the way back, the members of the Luotian assembly were all visibly excited, even their faces flushed. Not long ago, they had all been holding their breath because of the demon gate. There was a sense of guilt too. While it was true that Luo Li was the strongest among them, it was still a girl who had to step forward in the end. Moreover, Luo Li had been injured due to the enemy's shameless tactics, which left them feeling extremely ashamed. But fortunately, Chen had returned. In the face of the demon gate's shamelessness and power, he hadn't chosen to back down. Instead, he shocked everyone by taking the fight directly to the demon gate's headquarters, returning everything they had done in kind. Even now, the scene from earlier still stirred everyone's hearts. Even someone as strong as the crane demon had been forced to hold back, unable to take action, merely watching as the 10 spirit formations rampaged. Very few people in the entire Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy could push the crane demon to such a point, and only Chen, as a new student, had managed to achieve this. This feat was no less impressive than the 3 moves with Li Xintong from before. Mu Chen, seeing the excited faces of the group, simply smiled. His gaze shifted to the girl in black robes, quietly following him, Luo Li. She looked at him with soft, peaceful eyes, her glass-like pupils reflecting the ripples of autumn water. Noticing his gaze, Luo Li smiled at him, her smile pure and gentle, softening Mu Chen's heart in return. "Are you injured?" Luo Li asked gently. She knew how difficult Mu Chen's display had been today. It was no less grueling than his battle with Li Xiantong. But now, Mu Chen was far stronger than he had been back then. Mu Chen shook his head. Previously, he had relied mostly on the power of the White Dragon Spirit Pearl. The only fatigue he felt was from entering the heart formation state, but it was nothing compared to the previous battle. However, today's events had taken him by surprise. He had initially prepared 10 third-level spirit formations, but he hadn't expected to activate all of them. The difficulty was immense, yet when he entered the heart formation state, his control was so precise that he managed to activate all 10 formations as he had hoped. "It seems my control over the heart formation state has deepened," Mu Chen mused thoughtfully. His familiarity and mastery of the heart formation state had clearly surpassed what it had been in the past. In terms of spirit array cultivation, he truly possessed remarkable talent. But this kind of power, though impressive, required careful preparation over a long period of time. The spirit formations had to be inscribed in advance, and any mistake along the way would nullify all progress. "Mu Chen," a voice suddenly called from behind. Mu Chen stopped in his tracks, turned, and saw Su Xian, Su Ling'er, and the others catching up to him. "Senior Su Xian," Mu Chen said with a smile. "Thank you so much for earlier." Though he wasn't afraid of the crane demon truly losing control, he was still grateful for Su Xian's timely help. "You remember to thank me now? After I helped you, you ran off." Su Ling'er huffed. Mu Chen gave an awkward smile. He just didn't want to stay there any longer with so many eyes on him. He cleared his throat and quickly introduced Luo Li. "Hee, I've heard already. Luo Li is now 15th on the heavenly ranking. She's more famous than you here in the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy," Su Xian said, eyeing Luo Li with admiration. "Quite impressive." Luo Li's ranking had risen to 15th after defeating Chen Ho and others when they came to stir trouble at the Luotian Assembly, but she didn't care much about the ranking. It had all happened because others challenged her first, and she had only responded. Friendships among girls seemed to form quickly. Even in the presence of the extraordinarily graceful Luo Li, who had an air of elegance, Li Qing, normally as cold as ice, couldn't help but smile slightly. The two quickly became familiar with each other. "You need to be careful of the crane demon," Su Xian said, her gaze turning serious as she looked at Mu Chen. "The crane demon is quite scheming. If I'm not mistaken, he's hiding his true strength." Mu Chen was momentarily taken aback, then nodded seriously. In truth, it wasn't just Su Xian who had this feeling. Even he could sense something. From the crane demon, he detected dangerous ripples. The guy was definitely a threat. But after being pushed to this point, he's still not revealing his strength. Mu Chen squinted, deep in thought. What exactly is he planning? "Next month is the hunting war," Su Xian said with a light smile. "Are you suggesting that he's planning to reveal his true strength during the hunting war?" Mu Chen was surprised, then his eyes flashed. "He intends to surpass you in the hunting war, doesn't he?" "Perhaps I'm not his real target," Su Xian replied. "His target is Li Xiantong?" Mu Chen was shocked. So the crane demon was after Li Xiantong? No wonder he was refusing to reveal his strength. It seemed like he was afraid Li Xiantong would be prepared in advance. The crane demon is proud and doesn't want to be overshadowed. The hunting war is a grand event for our Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. If he surpasses Li Xiantong in this event, his reputation at the academy will surpass Li Xiantong's, even reaching Shan Zongxing's level, Su Xian explained. Mu Chen's expression grew serious. Having fought against Li Xiantong, he knew how formidable the man was. If the crane demon was confident enough to challenge Li Xiantong, he must have some powerful hidden cards. He couldn't be underestimated. Right now, the crane demon and he were like water and fire. Once the hunting war started, Mu Chen would certainly be added to the crane demon's hunting list, and the latter would no longer hold back. In the hunting war, Everything would rely on true strength. If Su Xian intervened on his behalf, it would only make him the subject of ridicule. Mu Chen narrowed his eyes, recalling the crane demon's sinister gaze. He then smiled slightly. Su Xian, I understand. Since he had already come this far, he wouldn't regret it. No matter how much the crane demon was hiding, if he thought he could easily suppress Mu Chen, it wouldn't be that simple. Su Xian gave a slight nod. These were just reminders. Although the crane demon was powerful, the young man in front of her wasn't exactly a pushover. How things would turn out, they would only know when the clash actually happened. After more conversation, Su Xian and the others left. Mu Chen stood there, watching their retreating figures, lost in thought. What are you going to do? Are you participating in the hunting war? Luoli asked, looking at Mu Chen. The hunting war has so many benefits. Of course, I have to participate, Mu Chen said with a smile. The spirit light enlightenment was obviously very beneficial for cultivation. If he passed it up, the loss would be too great. What about the crane demon? Luoli hesitated slightly. Once the hunting war started, there would be no more rules. Aside from not being allowed to kill, even seriously injuring someone might not be considered a violation. The crane demon was cunning and clearly no simple opponent. For such an adversary, caution was essential. If they weren't careful, he might strike like a venomous snake hiding in the dark, launching a lethal attack when least expected. Don't worry, Mu Chen smiled. The crane demon may have hidden his strength, but I'm not that easy to deal with. He added, besides, there's still a month. I plan to enter the Thunder Domain to train and prepare for the hunting war. Now that he had obtained the White Dragon Spirit Pearl, its mysteries were still not fully understood. Since he had the time, he could study it in depth. Maybe it would help him increase his strength even further. The hunting war would certainly see many unexpected underdogs rise. With powerful opponents like the crane demon, if Mu Chen slacked off, he might truly be left far behind. That was not a situation he was willing to face. I'll accompany you, Luoli smiled. Mu Chen chuckled in response. It's like the saying, the prince wields his sword and conquers the world, while the concubine plays the zither and follows her lord in life and death. Luoli's delicate face flushed with a hint of red. She shot Mu Chen a playful glare before quickly walking away with Yi Qingling. As Mu Chen and the others were leaving, the crane demon stood on the chaotic plaza of the Demon Gate headquarters, his gaze dark and filled with murderous intent as he looked at the ruins of the headquarters. Boss. Behind him, Chun Ho and the others had grim expressions. Today, Mu Chen had come directly to their door, and for the Demon Gate, it was a major loss of face. Boss, if you had made a move, how could that kid have been so arrogant? Chun Ho said in a low voice. After all, he was one of the core members of the Demon Gate, so he knew some of the crane demon's background. The crane demon glanced at him indifferently, his voice cold as he replied, My opponent is Li Xintong, a freshman. He's not worth me revealing my true strength. But are we really just going to let that kid off? Chun Ho said reluctantly. Boom. As soon as his words fell, a cold, vicious glint flashed in the crane demon's eyes. He slapped his hand out, and a massive wave of spiritual power surged forth, instantly turning into a huge force that swept across the ruins. All the boulders were reduced to dust in an instant. That scene made all the members of the Demon Gate fall silent in fear. Don't worry. During the hunting war, I'll make that kid kneel and beg for mercy for what he did today. A mere freshman really thinks he can jump around on top of me. The crane demon? He's courting death. Now, let him enjoy himself for a month, he said coldly, flicking his sleeve and turning to leave.